Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, folks. Michael Zuber, one rental at a time, back with his Thursday expert, Mr. Jonathan Twomley. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing very well because it's Thursday. This is one of the highlights of my week, and we missed a couple of shows, so I'm glad to be back.
Awesome. We missed you. Thank you for doing this every week. You've been doing this for a couple of years now. You have your own playlist. We got to tell all your fans in Facebook, you have your own playlist with over 100 hours of discussions.
Actually, send me the link because I was trying to show my daughter my playlist the other day. I couldn't find it. So
I will do that.
So I got to figure out how to get into YouTube. I'm not a big YouTube consumer.
I will take care of you. I took an action item. You'll have it later this morning.
Okay, awesome.
But what I wanted to talk about, so I'm obviously the residential guy in this conversation. I told my audience the other day that I'm actually excited about what's coming. I've already changed because I have this thing called average, right? What is an average yield in my market? Forever, it's been 6% because the market was hot. I think it was 3 weeks ago. I'm like, I'm done. No more sixes. Average is 7. What that means in my world is I never do average. So if 7 is the average, I need to do 8s, 9s, and 10s. These are cash on cash. I call it yield returns. I'm also telling people to start fishing for motivated sellers. Again, very residential on the MLS, whatever you want. So what I want to ask you, because you play in a world that I have no experience in, is what is going on in commercial? You are underwriting deals all the time. You're very conservative. I love all our stories. But what has changed, right? We are now, for years, you could probably count on flat or down rates or cost of money. I think it's fair to assume that's not the case anymore. And I'm wondering what, if anything, has changed. And oh, by the way, we have a recession that could be coming. And I'm wondering if that goes into your calculation. So I just want to listen to see what's going on in your world.
Yeah. So first I'll start with what I'm seeing, and then I'll talk about sort of how I approach it. But what I'm seeing is I wouldn't call it a major softening, but a noticeable softening in pricing.
Okay.
So just, in terms of what I'm seeing, what I'm talking about with brokers and what other people are telling me that they're seeing, there are deals that are falling out.
Yeah.
There are deals that are sitting on the market longer than they thought. They're not getting the same number of offers as in the past, and starting to see a little bit of a mismatch between buyers and sellers, right? So that is noticeable. I mean, I've heard people talking about buying assets for, the prices come down, frankly. And maybe some of those assets were overpriced to begin with, right? Nevertheless, the sellers are not simply sticking a price tag on the property and getting it anymore.
Yeah.
Right? So
there was a time that they would do a hope and a prayer number and they'd get it.
The last 2 years have been extraordinary, right? Where in 2019, I'm sure if you guys go back and listen to some of the stuff that you and I were talking about in 2019, we were talking about the fact that cap rates just couldn't go any lower than they were.
I remember.
They were historically low.
I sold an apartment in late 19 because that's what I believed. Yeah.
And they went lower. Now they went lower because of COVID, right? It's a unique
situation. Still went lower.
They go lower, right? Yeah. Which literally nobody thought would happen. But it's because of all, and you and I talk about this all the time, all those free money sloshing around the world, right? That's what caused it to go even lower. So the last 2 years have been like just nuts, right? Where cap rates, in places like Texas, where they were never, historically below 5, even in big cities, got into the 3s, right? I mean, we're talking about like Tokyo and Hong Kong level cap rates in places like Texas, right? And so, and bizarrely, like cap rates lower in Texas than in New York City, right?
Yeah.
And because there was a ton of money out there and it was all going the same place, right? Yep. So, and I have some of, my friends who didn't sell in 2019. I mean, some of my friends have made like major money in the last 2 years and some deals I've been involved with.
Yeah.
Doubling your money in 18 months kind of thing.
Yeah. Right? I probably lost $500,000 selling in 19.
Yeah. But of course, nobody could predict it.
No,
right?
I mean, I still feel good about it. I mean, with the data I had at hand.
Right. And the thing is, the people who didn't sell in 2019, they didn't sell because their plan was to hold.
Yeah, there's some difference.
It wasn't like they were like,
they got lucky.
Well, I think it's gonna run. It's like I've got 3 years left on my hold. I'm not selling yet, right?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
So, but it really worked out in their favor, right? Because and I was in a deal in Atlanta that is just about to close on the sale, and we've made 80% basically made 80% equity increase in a little more than 12 months, right? Because of just how crazy pricing got. Well, now the Fed is taking a punch bowl away, as we said before. And so with interest rates rising, it means that it's a little bit more difficult for buyers to offer that much money for these assets. And it's causing things to slow down a little bit. And I wouldn't say it's causing things to slow down in a major way. We're not in a crash.
No.
We're not seeing prices being reduced across the board. None of that. But
what has the cost of money? Because again, residential has gone up almost 250 basis points, trough to the new peak at 5.25. How about commercial? Where is it at today?
It's still probably like high 3s, low 4s.
Oh, really? Wow. Okay.
Yeah. But still, it's more expensive than it has been, right?
Sure.
So,
yeah.
And it probably depends on your debt source. And like a lot of people have been doing bridge debt recently, which is more expensive anyway. And for some of the flippers, like, this cost of capital is not going to change what they're doing, because they can easily absorb assuming the projections all work, like they can absorb a little bit higher interest rate because they're paying, interest only for a very short period of time, right? It's like, 24 months to get, so if the interest rate goes up a little bit, it doesn't really change the fundamentals of the deal that much, right? So, but I think it really does affect people who are looking to do longer term buy and holds, where you're locking in a higher interest rate, the bank is going to lend you less money. The banks are much more stringent than they have different metrics than the bridge lenders for what your coverage has to be, right? So bridge lenders don't care about it as much, right? Whereas the banks, they need your debt service coverage ratio to be a certain number, and as interest rates goes up, it causes that number to rise. So that kind of stuff is definitely affecting sort of the pricing a bit around the margins. I think what it's doing is really the assets that are fairly priced in the market are still trading around what they're asking, right? But the ones that were really aggressively priced, they're not getting those aggressive prices anymore.
Yeah, same thing in residential, right? If you have a hope and a prayer number, nothing, nothing. Yeah.
So, I mean, no crash on the horizon, I would say, but depends on how high interest rates go, right? And that could really, if they really raise rates, if we start looking at interest rates for commercial property in the 5s and 6s, like we haven't seen those numbers in there.
Yeah, and can we tell people why, or again, just our opinion, why commercial debt is cheaper than residential debt? We probably have some house buyers going, my debt's 6%. Why is his debt 4%? It's just because it's all short term. It's not fixed.
So for one thing, it's shorter. So it's either 5, 7, or 10 years, right? Your amortization schedule might still be 30 years, but it's 5, 7, or 10 usually, and sometimes 12 with a balloon payment that you have to refinance. So the bank's getting its money back sooner.
Yeah, correct.
So it can hedge that interest rate risk better than your 30-year mortgage.
Yeah, I just wanted people to realize.
Yeah, that's one thing too. And also I think, the lender looking at, say, like you versus a multifamily asset.
You also have a lot more down, let's not forget.
Yeah, that's true too. So you're looking at 20 to 25% minimum down, right? And then the other thing is, the residential mortgage lender, they're looking at like, okay, what's your salary?
Yeah, looking at you.
And it's you, and if you lose your job, like, can you pay? And like all that sort of goes into the calculation of like, how risky is this? Whereas you look at an apartment building, the lender's going, that's why they have this debt service coverage ratio, right? They're looking and saying, well, we don't think that 30% of the tenants are going to leave, right? So it's a lot safer for them. They know that like that's a pretty unlikely scenario that you're going to have like a mass exodus of your tenants. So it's less risky than lending somebody money for a house.
Correct.
And you're also valuing it on cash flow, not on comps, right? The comps can change at any time, right?
Yes.
So whereas the cash flow is a bit more stable, because you tend not to have like big reductions in rents. It's very, it has happened. It happened during the Great Recession, but you have to have like a major economic blowout for you to really have like major rent reductions, right? Or like COVID in New York City had major rent reductions, but look, now it's all back. Now it's
and some.
right?
Yeah.
So, and the banks know that that's what happens, right? So that's why your interest rates are better for commercial.
So as we look at kind of the future, again, you're underwriting deals that you're likely to hold for years. There's really a couple of variables that I'm just curious what you're looking at. One is future expenses, right? I don't think it's a secret that inflation is here. Inflation is hits a lot of aspects of being an apartment owner, obviously property taxes, insurance, but also labor management stuff, right? Also impacts rent. So again, how do you treat inflation? Have you raised your kind of underwriting expenses or anything?
Yeah, I mean, you have to, at least in some of your scenarios, right? You have to think about that, right? Now, fortunately, for an apartment building, your biggest cost items are property taxes. In most jurisdictions, it's going to be property taxes, insurance, your debt, which your debt is not going to change, right? And labor, right? You've got materials, but materials are usually not a big cost item.
Okay.
Because unless you're doing a big rehab, and then you're sort of, it's a one-shot deal, right? So like maybe it's going to cost you a little more to do your rehab, but you bake that number in.
Yeah, it's a known number.
Yeah, more or less, right? But if you're talking about like doing apartment turns, right? Like if the cost of a can of paint goes up 8%, like you're not really like that's a couple bucks. Like it's just not like a major cost item, right? Okay. So, but I would say that you still, I think it's a good idea. Standard underwriting, we've always done 2% expense growth and maybe 3% for certain items. Like I usually like to do 3% for property taxes, 2% for everything else. But now we have this, high inflation environment. So I think at least maybe for the first couple of years, you have to maybe pump those numbers up a bit.
Nice.
And I think long term, I think you can say, well, we're going to revert to long term.
Okay. How about because I think we're going into a recession. I've been through a recession as an apartment owner. It can be rough. Are you adjusting? Because again, I think as we talked about, I think it was episode 1, a lot of bad habits have become best practices. And I think there's some wild ass crazy assumptions in some of these numbers I see.
One of them, yeah. I mean, I think there has been just record occupancy in apartment buildings. Yeah. Right. So and I mean, every deal I look at, it's 98 to 100% full. Yep. And all the comps are 98 to 100% full. And I think some people have started underwriting their deals at 98%, right? And I never changed that. So I still underwrite at 95%, which is like industry standard forever, right? And so I think that gives me some cushion, if occupancy really does go to 95%. And and I think if there was a recession, it probably would.
Oh yeah, it will
go further than that. But we do really have like a housing crunch, and when you look around and everything is full, you look around and there's like 3 vacant apartments in the comp set of 10 apartments. Like that's bad. So it could fall, but I don't think it's going to fall that far. And then another thing is that people should understand is that professionally managed apartments tend to have lower vacancy rates than mom and pop ones, right? Because they've got somebody whose job it is to fill the apartment, right?
Yeah, so they're working ahead of time. They're listing early. Right. It's a
and
system.
they're starting to approach tenants about renewal like 90 days ahead of time. Like they've got a system to make sure that these apartments stay full. Yep. And they'll not raise the rents if necessary. Whatever they're just working to keep it full. I mean, I remember I had management companies were like, their rule was if this building is not 95% full, then the manager has to work on Saturday, right? Working 6 days a week until they fill it. That was the rule. So, as opposed to a mom and pop, where like maybe that's not their full-time job, and and it hurts to like pay to put an ad up to rent it, and like all that kind of stuff. So their vacancy rates can be higher, right, than professionally managed ones. So
Yeah.
That also, I think, for the kind of deals I do, gives me a little bit of comfort. But that being said, you really need to be thinking about these things, and you need to be. That's why we talked before about sort of what your break even occupancy is. That I think the way that people are looking at things, at least the people that I know, I think they're really looking at things not so much like, am I going to try to figure out like what exactly my occupancy rate is, or what exactly like my, the cost growth is going to be. Like, I'll adjust my numbers a little bit, but I'm really focused on that break even occupancy.
Gotcha.
Right. So, because you're hopefully buying with enough cushion that if your pro forma doesn't, if it doesn't perform to pro forma, well, you're not losing money. You're just not making as much money as you thought you would.
Right.
Right. That's the quote unquote risk. Whereas, but you really want to be taking a really hard look at what that break even is, how likely do you think you are to get there. And you want to probably scenario plan a little bit like, well, if interest rates go up when I exit, what does that look like? Am I going to be all right? You want to kind of like think about those various worst case scenarios and make sure that, you feel comfortable with the likelihood of them happening. Right. And then
Awesome.
there's some things you just can't control beyond that. Right?
Well, Jonathan, you put out an amazing, you actually help people learn this stuff. This is an area I have no experience in. So tell people where they can find your course and learn more about
you. So right now, unfortunately, the only way you can get my course is to join my program, but that's totally reasonable. So, for a really low monthly membership fee, you can get my entire course. It's like 70 videos. There's a whole bunch of other material that you get, like just tons and tons of stuff that you get. And you get a monthly call with me and access to me in the Facebook group to ask as many questions as you want. So as you're going through all this material, you're learning how to underwrite deals, learning how to do your due diligence, learning all that stuff. You've got me in your corner to ask questions of, and so I think it's a really good deal. That can be found at multifamilylaunchpad.org/join.
Awesome.
If you want to get all the details on that.
Awesome, Jonathan. Thank you very much for all you do. I appreciate it.
Yep, I do too.